Filing your taxes is something we all dread. It's tedious, stressful, and often feels like navigating a maze without a map. We've all been there, staring at those forms and wondering if we're doing it right or if a mistake will come back to haunt us. But what if I told you the system isn't confusing by accident? It's designed to be that way. Sounds crazy, right? Well, in fact, the IRS expects the average person to calculate their taxes using the tax code that's over 2,600 pages long. Even experts can't agree on the answers. Hey, welcome back to Old Guy Insights. I'm Steve Rode, your old guy. Imagine checking your mail and seeing that dreaded envelope with the words, Internal Revenue Service, staring back at you. Your stomach drops, your mind races. What did I do wrong? In fact, you think you might even get a paper cut opening that darn envelope.
Ow!
It's never good news, and you're not opening that letter thinking, oh, maybe they're writing to thank me. No, you're bracing yourself wondering if this is the beginning of a financial nightmare. For some, IRS stands for I am really screwed. And honestly, that feeling isn't so far off. Let's be real. I've never received a letter from the IRS saying, hey, Steve, great job with your taxes this year. Love the precision on line 22. No, it's always bad news, doom and gloom. The mere sight of that envelope is enough to make your pulse quicken and your palms sweat. It's like getting a letter from your boss saying, we need to talk. But 10 times worse because this boss controls your bank account and can garnish your wages. But let me tell you about one experience I had with the IRS that takes the cake. It wasn't just a bad day, it was a full-on catastrophe. One of the worst 24 hours of my life. And as it all unfolded, I couldn't believe how much worse it kept getting. Oh, you'll see what I mean. Hey, before I forget, it would be a giant help if you could like this show, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future shows. I'd love to have you join the family. Let's face it, tax season feels like running an obstacle course blindfolded. Why? Well, because the IRS expects you to calculate exactly how much you owe based on rules buried in 2,652 pages of the tax code. Let me put that into perspective. That's longer than War and Peace, and that's a big book. Except with the tax code, there's no plot, no hero, and every wrong turn comes with a penalty. Even Einstein called the tax code one of the hardest things to understand. And the man invented relativity. Meanwhile, we're over here trying to figure out if line 37C applies to us while praying the IRS doesn't come knocking. And here's the kicker. Even if you're proactive and call the IRS for help, there's a 25% chance they'll give you the wrong answer. That's like calling tech support for your computer and ending up with it more broken than when you started. And if you rely on the tax information from the IRS and it's wrong, you'll still be penalized. And the system is so perverse that even after you file, you're left sitting around wondering if the IRS is going to disagree with your calculations and hit you with fines and penalties. It's like submitting a homework assignment to the world's strictest teacher, except they don't tell you what you got wrong until after they dock your grade and add a fine. In a previous video, I talked about how lobbyists and special interest groups almost run Capitol Hill. They don't just influence lawmakers, they practically direct them. I even shared a personal story about how I was approached by a lobbying group that handed me a draft law. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a ready-to-go piece of legislation that, for a fee, would have directly benefited my company. But do you know how the tax code itself is created? This is an aha moment when you realize it. If you thought the experts at the IRS create the tax code, that would be logical, but you would be what I like to call wrong. Here's how it works. Lobbyists, representing corporations, special interest groups, or industries, craft specific provisions and loopholes that serve their clients. They hand those neatly drafted sections of tax code to lawmakers who push them forward, and once approved, these new rules get baked into the ever-expanding tax code. Think about it like this. It's like adding new cheat codes to a video game. But only for the people who paid for them. The rest of us, we're still playing at level 1, trying to figure out the basic controls while they're zooming ahead with infinite lives and unlimited power-ups. And here's the kicker. These provisions often get buried in such complex language that the average person, or even most accountants, can barely understand them. In fact, even IRS employees and enforcement agents sometimes don't fully understand the rules they're supposed to enforce. This isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's not. It's how the system works. It's a tangled web of influence, money, and complexity. And guess who gets stuck untangling that web every April? Yep, you and me. Let me share a personal story that perfectly sums up how broken this system is. Years ago, I was audited by the IRS. It was one of those most horrible experiences that I've had in my lifetime. But it has an unexpected twist. That day, long before cell phones and instant communication, I drove to my audit completely unaware of the chaos unfolding at home. When I finally got back, I learned that my infant daughter had stopped breathing and had to be rushed to the hospital. The thought of not being there for her during such a terrifying moment hit me like a ton of bricks. And if that wasn't enough, while I was processing that, the state police knocked on my door, looking for my neighbor. It felt like everything was collapsing at once. But back at the audit, I was trying to hold it all together. I had read tips on dealing with the IRS, everything from not showering so you stink really bad, and then eating a lot of garlic to make them want you gone. But I decided to go with the opposite approach. Be overly prepared and organized. Armed with neatly labeled, color-coded folders, I walked into the IRS office, determined to stay calm. The office felt like a warehouse for misery. Rows of steel gray government desks sat under buzzing fluorescent lights, and the unmistakable chattering of a dot matrix printer echoed through the cavernous space. As I sat in the waiting room, the sweat on my back stuck my shirt to the chair, and my mind raced with thoughts of what could go wrong. After 45 minutes of sitting there in that waiting room alone, I was finally escorted back. I passed a man in a wheelchair crying at another agent's desk. He was terrified they were going to take his wheelchair. And at that moment, I thought, if this is what they're doing to him, what will they do to me? When I reached my desk, the agent slammed his nameplate. Boom! He slammed it down on the desk and he barked, "My name is Johnson. Write it down." His voice was sharp and condescending as he added, "You're going to need it." And then he leaned in and he said, "I'm going to find you owe us money. And you know what else? Interest." I felt like I was on trial. The fluorescent lights above seemed to get brighter as he flipped through my paperwork, frowning and sighing and calculating dramatically. After hours of questions and requests for more documents, I was told to come back for a second appointment. The entire process was humiliating and exhausting. But here's the kicker. At the end of it all, the IRS owed me money. Yeah, that's right. After all the intimidation and hoops they made me jump through, I didn't owe a dime. And when I asked, "Hey, so do I get interest?" the agent laughed and went, "Good one. Yes. The audit wasn't just about money, it was about power. The entire system is designed to confuse and intimidate people like me, making us feel small and powerless. Even when I won, I walked out feeling defeated. And that's the cruel irony of it all. Meanwhile, countries like Estonia and the UK, where I lived for a few years, have it figured out. Their tax systems are simple, transparent, and straightforward. Here, complexity isn't just a bug, it's a feature. Because let's face it, the confusion is profitable for someone, and it's not you and me. And think about it. Tax preparation companies like TurboTax rake in billions because you can't do it alone. Big accounting firms thrive on complexity, charging hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands of dollars to make sense of your numbers. And then there are lobbyists pushing for new deductions, exemptions, and rules that benefit their clients, not you. It's like a board game with rules so convoluted only the people who wrote them know how to play. And they charge you a fee every time you land on their property. The tax system isn't just a headache. It's a reflection of deeper problems in how our institutions treat everyday people. It's not built for you or me, it's built to keep things complicated and profitable for others. But that doesn't mean we have to accept it. I mean, we can try and demand better, simpler, and fairer systems because we deserve them. If you've ever felt the dread of opening that IRS letter, you're not alone. And it's not your fault. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your tax horror stories in the comments. Let's build a community where we can all navigate this mess together. Until next time, remember, be kind to one another, look for joy where you can find it, and always do good things. See ya.